Mount Holly, North Carolina, is a quiet town tucked into Gaston County. The kind of place where people raise families, attend church, and build lives defined by routine and community. For Stacy Robinson, it was home. It was where she had made her life, where she was raising her two daughters, and where on September 23, 2018, everything she had built was taken from her in the most deliberate and calculated way possible. Stacy Robinson was born in Mecklenburg County to John and Susie Robinson. She grew up alongside two brothers, Eric and Paul, and a sister named Amy. She was a bright, energetic person whose warmth was immediately apparent to anyone who spent time around her. After graduating from East Gaston High School, she earned an associate degree in paralegal sciences from Gaston College and went on to work at two law firms, Ted Grieve and Associates and Reagan & Reagan. But the work that truly suited her was teaching. She found her place at the preschool at First Baptist Charlotte, then at First Methodist Preschool in Mount Holly, and later at the Stowe IMC. She was skilled with her hands and loved crafting, particularly making small painted wooden signs that she sold to friends and neighbors. She loved going to the beach, watching sports, and taking photographs of her daughters. She was, by every account, a genuinely happy person. It was during her time working at a department store that Stacy met Joshua Hunsucker. He was 2 years older and a former college football player, confident and persistent. The first thing Joshua noticed about her was her height. Stacy stood at 5 feet 11 inches. Joshua was 6 feet 5. He asked her out multiple times and she turned him down each time. He found out she played softball, showed up at her practice, and joined her team. Eventually, the persistence worked. Their relationship became romantic, and in 2010 they married in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. From the outside, Stacy and Joshua Hunsucker appeared to be exactly what people hoped a young couple would be. They went to concerts and cookouts with friends. They were, as those close to them described, a cute couple. No one heard them argue. They welcomed two daughters, Piper Elizabeth and Willow Darlene, and Stacy devoted herself fully to motherhood, stepping back from her career to be present for her girls every day. Joshua had built a career as a flight paramedic with Atrium Health's Med Center Air, a position he had held since 2013. He was trained, capable, and well-regarded in his field. Beneath the surface of this ordinary picture, something was being done to Stacy that she could not see, could not feel the origin of, and could not explain. In February 2013, following the birth of Piper, Stacy began experiencing medical problems. The symptoms were vague and troubling. Her heart rate dropped without explanation. Her blood pressure became unstable. Doctors ran tests and found nothing that could account for what was happening to a young woman with no family history of cardiac disease. Then, in July 2013, a fire destroyed the family home, wiping out most of what they owned and adding financial devastation to the medical uncertainty already surrounding them. Friends rallied. A GoFundMe campaign was created by a friend named Suzanne Steinbrenner to help cover the mounting costs. The page became a running record of Stacy's declining health over the years that followed. The episodes continued. In November 2014, after the birth of Willow, Stacy was hospitalized with dangerously low heart rate and blood pressure. She was placed in the intensive care unit for several days, while doctors searched for answers they could not find. In January 2015, she was readmitted with a low heart rate. This time, inside her hospital room, her heart stopped entirely. She went into cardiac arrest and was placed on a ventilator. The medical team stabilized her, but they still could not explain why a young woman in her 20s kept experiencing these events. In February 2015, a pacemaker was implanted in her chest. She was not yet 30 years old. Every one of those episodes, every hospitalization, every cardiac event, every baffling result that left doctors without answers, was later understood to be consistent with poisoning from tetrahydrozoline, a chemical compound found in common over-the-counter eye drops used to reduce redness. When tetrahydrozoline is ingested rather than applied externally, it can cause a severe drop in heart rate and blood pressure. It can trigger cardiac events. In high enough concentrations, it can kill. Crucially, it does not appear on standard toxicology panels, unless a laboratory is specifically directed to test for it. The substance goes undetected. Joshua Hunsucker, as a flight paramedic with years of training and direct access to non-controlled substances in the course of his work, understood medications and their effects on the human body with clinical precision. He knew which substances would affect the heart. He knew what standard tests would and would not detect. He knew that Stacy's documented cardiac history would make any future death appear unremarkable to everyone who reviewed her file. The medical history he was quietly building, episode by episode, year by year, was not a record of a woman with an unexplained illness. It was a cover story. On the evening of September 23, 2018, Joshua called 911 and told responding officers that he had found his 32-year-old wife unresponsive, slumped over the side of the couch. What he said next began to shift depending on who was listening. To officers at the scene, he said he had gone outside to check that their cars were locked due to recent auto burglaries in the neighborhood. To a friend, he said he had gone for a walk to burn some energy. To another, he said he had been outside cutting wood for signs he made. To Stacy's mother, Susie, he said he had been sitting at the kitchen table working on his laptop with his back to Stacy, and when he turned around, she was already slumped over. 4 different people, 4 different stories, none of them the same. When paramedics arrived, Stacy was not breathing. She was blue. They rushed her to hospital, but there was nothing to be done. Stacy Robinson Hunsucker was pronounced dead. The cause appeared straightforward to everyone present. She had a pacemaker. She had a well-documented history of cardiac episodes. She was 32 years old with a failing heart. The local authorities treated her death as natural. Case closed. But Joshua's behavior in the hours and days that followed told a different story. He refused to allow a coroner to perform an autopsy. He was adamant about it, unyielding in a way that struck those around him as deeply unusual. Stacy had registered as an organ donor. For someone whose husband was supposed to support that decision, blocking an examination of her body was a jarring contradiction. Within 2 days of her death, Stacy was cremated. Most families take weeks before reaching that point, weighing grief and logistics and the need to say goodbye properly. Joshua had her cremated almost immediately. Within those same 2 days, he filed claims against 2 life insurance policies. One was valued at $200,000 with a double indemnity clause. The other was worth $50,000. He was the sole beneficiary on both. The total payout was $250,000, and he filed for it before his wife had even been given a funeral. The funeral itself was arranged and paid for by Stacy's parents, John and Susie Robinson. Joshua appeared to be going through motions rather than mourning. He seemed detached from a process that for a grieving husband of 8 years and the father of 2 young daughters should have been the most devastating experience of his life. He hired a babysitter named Kaylin McDonald to look after Piper and Willow in the months that followed. What Kaylin observed during that time was troubling in its clarity. Joshua was never sad. Not once. He did not cry. He did not appear depressed. He did not speak about missing Stacy. He did not share memories of her with his daughters. Instead, he was happy. Visibly, openly happy. He had a girlfriend, a colleague named Jennifer Elkins, who went by Jen. She was present in the household constantly. Kaylin described it as always being about Jen. The 2 of them talked freely about their future together, about buying a new house and starting fresh, not the home Joshua had shared with Stacy, but somewhere new. Within 6 months of Stacy's death, Jennifer had moved into the Mount Holly home where Stacy had lived and died. Joshua's colleagues at Atrium Health's Med Center had noticed the same pattern. They described him as appearing entirely unaffected by his wife's death, as if it had been an inconvenience rather than a loss, as if the outcome had been anticipated. Then came the spending. After collecting $250,000 from Stacy's life insurance policies, Joshua bought a boat valued somewhere between $80,000 and $100,000. A judge would later warn him, through his attorney, not to attempt to conceal or dispose of it. He took multiple expensive vacations with Jennifer, Trips that would not have been possible when he and Stacy were still struggling with the weight of her medical debt. He paid off the mortgage on the family home, which was valued at just over $215,000. For Susie Robinson, Stacy's mother, these details accumulated into something she could no longer ignore. She had always carried a background worry about her daughter, a persistent unease that something was not right. She learned that Joshua had been seeing Jennifer before Stacy died. The affair had been ongoing while Stacy was still alive, while Stacy was sitting in intensive care units fighting to understand what was happening to her own body. The rapid insurance claims, the refusal of the autopsy, the immediate cremation, the new girlfriend who had been there all along, the complete absence of grief, the years of mysterious health problems that no doctor had ever been able to explain. The pieces had been scattered across nearly a decade. Susie began to arrange them. In May 2019, 9 months after her daughter's death, Susie Robinson contacted the North Carolina Department of Insurance and filed fraud allegations against Joshua. She believed he had killed Stacy for the insurance money and to free himself from a marriage that had become an obstacle to the life he wanted. What her phone call set in motion went far beyond what she could have anticipated. The insurance fraud referral was routed to a criminal investigations division. The local determination of natural death was set aside. A team assembled that included investigators from the North Carolina Department of Insurance Criminal Investigations Division, Gaston County Police, and the Department of Homeland Security. Special Agent Lisa Morgan was assigned to lead the investigation. What the team discovered early in their work would prove to be the critical difference between a perfect crime and a prosecutable one. Because Stacy had registered as an organ donor, the LifeShare Donor Center had preserved a vial of her blood before she was cremated. This was standard procedure for organ donors, a routine step in the process. Joshua had arranged for Stacy's body to be cremated before any formal investigation began, eliminating virtually every other avenue of physical evidence. He had not counted on that vial of blood. The sample was sent to a laboratory for toxicology testing. Standard panels came back negative. Nothing obvious, nothing expected, but the investigation did not stop there. More specialized testing was requested. Broader screening designed to identify substances that would not normally appear on a routine panel. The results came back positive for tetrahydrozoline. The concentration found in Stacy's blood was 30 to 40 times higher than any therapeutic level. This was not incidental contact. This was not a small amount accidentally ingested. The quantity present in her system could only be explained by deliberate, repeated, systematic administration over time. Tetrahydrozoline is the active ingredient in over-the-counter eye drops such as Visine, products found in medicine cabinets and pharmacies across the country. Applied externally as directed, they are safe. Ingested, they become something entirely different. The compound can cause a dramatic reduction in heart rate and blood pressure. It can bring about cardiac arrest. For someone with Stacy's documented cardiac history, for someone with a pacemaker and a body already compromised by years of low-level poisoning, it was particularly lethal. And because it does not appear on standard toxicology screens, it would have remained invisible forever had anyone not specifically gone looking for it. The investigation expanded further. Detectives interviewed Joshua's colleagues at Atrium Health, people who had worked alongside him before Stacy's death. What they described was specific and chilling. Before Stacy died, Joshua had told 2 coworkers that if he ever killed someone, he would do it using Visine or similar eye drops. These were not passing remarks. They were detailed, knowing statements from a trained medical professional who understood the mechanism precisely. Then investigators noted something else. About 2 weeks before Stacy's death, a case had received significant media coverage throughout the Charlotte area. On August 31, 2018, a nurse named Lana Sue Clayton had been arrested in South Carolina for poisoning her husband Stephen Clayton by putting eye drops into his water over 3 days until he died. The story was widely reported. Everyone in the region was aware of it. Court documents noted that both Joshua and Lana Clayton worked in the medical field. that both had been alone with their spouse at the time of death, that both deaths were initially ruled as natural causes, and that both involved tetrahydrozoline poisoning. In the days following that news coverage, Stacy Robinson Hunsucker was dead. On December 19, 2019, Joshua Lee Hunsucker was arrested at his Mount Holly home. He was charged with first-degree murder, felony insurance fraud, and obtaining property under false pretenses, having collected $250,000 while knowing that his wife had not died of natural causes. His bond was set at $1.5 million. 5 days later, on Christmas Eve 2019, he posted that bond and was released. What followed his release revealed the full depth of who Joshua Hunsucker was. He began a sustained campaign of harassment against Stacy's parents, John and Susie Robinson. He photographed and filmed them at their granddaughter's sporting events. He sent packages to their home demanding they abandon the murder case against him. He drove past their house repeatedly. He followed them in his vehicle. He made vulgar gestures at them in a church parking lot. The intimidation was relentless and calculated, designed to break them, to silence them, to make them stop. On February 4, 2023, Joshua filed a police report claiming he had been attacked while changing a flat tire. He said he had been pistol whipped, that his hands had been zip-tied, and that he had been injected with an unknown substance. He named John Robinson, Stacy's father, as his attacker. It was an attempt to frame the man whose daughter he had killed. Mount Holly police investigated and found no evidence to support any part of the account. The entire incident had been fabricated. Weeks after the staged kidnapping, Joshua poisoned his own 11-year-old daughter. She was hospitalized. Tests confirmed the presence of tetrahydrozoline in her system, along with an antidepressant not approved for children, a drug that was also found in Joshua's truck. When speaking to medical staff about her symptoms, Joshua suggested it appeared she had been given Visine. Medical personnel noted this was not a reasonable conclusion based on what they were observing. The prosecution's position was that Joshua had poisoned his daughter in an attempt to frame the Robinson family and remove them from any involvement in the girls' lives. In July 2024, a judge found that Joshua had abused his daughter and neglected both children. In August 2024, he was arrested again, this time for witness intimidation. In November 2024, his bond was revoked. He has remained in custody without bond since that time. There was one more event that belonged to this story. On November 26, 2019, less than a month before his murder arrest, Joshua allegedly set fire to medical equipment aboard an AM helicopter while the aircraft was in flight over Charlotte. At 12:59 in the morning, a syringe pump was ignited mid-flight. The helicopter made an emergency landing at a car dealership on Independence Boulevard. No one was injured. Joshua was charged with felony arson. He had already been placed on administrative leave for alleged workplace misconduct before the murder charges came. The day after his December 2019 arrest, he was terminated from Atrium Health's Med Center Air, where he had worked for 6 years. Stacy's trial was originally scheduled for March 2025. New developments tied to subsequent charges and conduct pushed those timelines further. The case continued to build around a man who had spent years constructing the appearance of a devoted husband while slowly and systematically ending his wife's life. After Joshua's initial arrest, Stacy's family released a statement. They said they would not rest until justice was served, and that they would do everything in their power to support and care for Piper and Willow. John and Susie Robinson continued their fight for custody of their granddaughters, who were removed from Joshua's care following the abuse findings. The girls, now approximately 12 and 14 years old, remained at the center of a legal battle that stretched far beyond the murder charge itself. In April 2020, Susie wrote about her daughter publicly. She described Stacy as sweet, funny, lovable, and smiling. She wrote that Stacy was missing so many milestones that it made her deeply sad that she was not there to celebrate her daughter's birthdays, and that she gave both girls an extra hug that day, especially for Stacy. The case of Stacy Robinson Hunsucker is a study in patience, deception, and the particular kind of danger that hides inside domestic life. The poison was ordinary, sold in drugstores, sitting in medicine cabinets. The killer was the person beside her, someone she had known since high school, someone she had married and built a family with. The medical emergencies that defined her final years were not mysteries. They were manufactured, one dose at a time, by the man who was supposed to protect her. What stood between Joshua Hunsucker and a perfect crime was a vial of blood, preserved by a donor registration Stacy had made for someone else, and a mother who refused to accept an explanation that did not fit what she knew about her daughter. Susie Robinson made one phone call. That call unraveled everything. Stacy Robinson Hunsucker was a devoted mother, a teacher, a church member, a woman who crafted wooden signs with personal messages and sold them to neighbors. She loved her daughters more than anything. Her smile, by every account, made the people around her feel comfortable and safe. She deserved a long life. She deserved to watch her girls grow up. She deserved far better than what was done to her inside the walls of her own home.